Welcome, curious minds, to a journey into some of the internet's most intriguing, bewildering, and, yeah, sometimes utterly unhinged corners. You know that weird feeling when a relationship, one that's supposed to be just transactional, kind of morphs into something deeply personal, but also completely off kilter. Well, today we're going to try and untangle one of the most prominent and often pretty bizarre examples of exactly that dynamic. We are taking a deep dive into the fascinating world that's sprung up around OnlyFans. And look, our focus isn't just the platform itself, okay? It's the very specific, often bewildering behaviors, the personas, the interactions, the stuff that makes you laugh and cringe and immediately question, well, everything you thought you knew about digital intimacy.
Yeah, what's really compelling here is watching how a platform, which, was initially pitched for all sorts of creators, chefs, musicians, you name it, how it's mostly evolves into this cultural phenomenon that just profoundly blurs the lines. We're talking business, intimacy, spectacle, all mixed up. So our mission for this deep dive, basically, is to pull out the most important insights into these dynamics. We want to help you understand not just what these behaviors are, but crucially, why they matter and, what they tell us about our digital age. We'll explore the creators, the often startling demands from subscribers, and the surprising cultural ripples. And this is all drawn directly from the sources you've provided. And we'll probably be mentioning parasocial relationships quite a bit. Just quickly, for anyone unfamiliar, that's like the one-sided bond people form with media figures. You feel you know them, but they have no idea who you are. On a platform like OnlyFans, that whole dynamic gets amplified, often intensified, and yeah, sometimes it gets pretty dangerous too.
Right. So get ready to explore a truly unique ecosystem. One where the rules are constantly changing, the incentives are frankly wild, and by the end of this, you might never look at a sandwich or a brownie or maybe even a snail the same way again. Let's unpack this together. The creator's persona, boss babes, mundane content, and blurring boundaries. Okay, so one of the first things, maybe the most striking that comes through from the sources is this really distinct subculture among creators. It's this strange, almost paradoxical mix of corporate empowerment speak with, well, explicit adult content. It's that classic boss babe meets hustle culture vibe, right? But with a really significant twist. You see these phrases everywhere: building an empire, financial freedom, my own boss, and like wellness coaching, MLMs. But here, they take on this entirely different, highly sexualized meaning. It's taking that entrepreneurial spirit, that whole self-starter story, and applying it to this very specific, very intimate kind of content creation. It's a powerful reframing, really, trying to give a traditionally stigmatized industry that shine of mainstream business legitimacy.
You're absolutely right. And if you zoom out, you see this reflected directly in how creators present themselves online. Their bios often have phrases exactly like, just a girl building her empire one subscription at a time, or maybe empowered entrepreneur taking control of my destiny. It has that same aspirational energy, like someone pushing crypto or selling handmade soaps. But here, it's just completely tied to adult content. And that creates this unique, paradoxical persona. It's a declaration of self-made success, sharp business skills, but applied to a field that's historically been, pushed to the fringes. It's a fascinating and, yeah, sometimes unsettling blend of corporate jargon and explicit stuff. It really highlights this complex rethinking of labor and value and personal agency in the digital economy. Creators often use this language not just to market themselves, but as a way to kind of reclaim control over their narrative, their work, pushing back against the stigma by framing it as legit, if maybe unconventional entrepreneurship.
And it's not just like a marketing front either. This is where it gets really interesting, the hustle. It's profoundly real. It's incredibly demanding. Our sources describe top creators logging these intense workdays, sometimes up to 14 hours. And a huge chunk of that time, it's dedicated almost entirely to answering every single direct message. Every single one. So this isn't just about taking a few nice photos or filming a quick video clip. No. It's a relentless, full-time job maintaining these complex, intimate client relationships. It's basically a round-the-clock commitment to engagement, making sure every subscriber feels seen, feels heard, feels valued. That level of personalized interaction, it's absolutely crucial for keeping people subscribed on these platforms. And it goes way beyond what you'd expect from, say, a typical influencer or content creator. It's constant performance of availability, of intimacy, which must be exhausting.
That really brings up a critical question, doesn't it? What does it actually mean when adult content creation becomes this rigorous, super personalized form of customer service? It fundamentally shifts the creator role into something like a head of client relations, right? Constantly engaged in this highly personal, often emotionally charged customer interaction, managing expectations, fostering intense loyalty. And this dynamic just underlines the immense emotional labor involved. It goes way beyond just the visual or the explicit content. You're not just selling a product or a service, you're cultivating an experience, an illusion of connection, a bespoke relationship, you could say, however transactional it ultimately is. This sustained, personalized engagement is often what sets successful creators apart in a really crowded market. But it also takes a huge personal and psychological toll. Creators talk about burnout, the constant pressure to be on, the blurring of their own identity with their online persona. It makes it incredibly hard to just switch off. It fundamentally challenges our usual understanding of what work even means in the digital age, especially when that work involves performing intimacy.
Okay, so moving from that carefully built boss babe persona to the actual content itself. The sources highlight this surprising and apparently incredibly popular genre, what we could call low effort but make it sexy. The advice, seriously, is pretty much just film yourself doing the most mundane, everyday stuff, but, well, without a lot of clothes on. That sounds almost ridiculous at first, doesn't it? But it's a legitimate, really successful strategy. It taps into this very specific desire subscribers have for intimacy and connection. Yeah, imagine this. One creator, it's detailed in the sources, filmed herself just online shopping, face down on her bed, scrolling through stuff. Nothing fancy, no high production values, just everyday life. Apparently, her subscribers absolutely loved it. Now, think about the really mundane things you might do today. Folding laundry, cooking dinner, brushing your teeth, maybe even wrestling with your email inbox. With this strategy, all of that becomes instantly monetizable content. Just add nudity. It's about putting the completely unexpected into the totally ordinary. It creates this jarring but undeniably compelling contrast that subscribers find, well, irresistible. The appeal isn't just the nudity itself, it's the context. The ordinary becoming extraordinary.
What's really striking here is just how brilliant this strategy is for building and intensifying those parasocial relationships we mentioned. You're not just buying explicit content in isolation, you're buying into this illusion of shared domestic life, of intimate daily routine. This kind of content gives subscribers this manufactured sense of shared experience. Like their internal thought might be, oh wow, she folds towels just like me. Just, with way less clothing, we have so much in common. She really gets me. Oh. This perceived similarity deepens the personal connection, right? It blurs those lines between fantasy and reality for the consumer even more. It's a masterful use of that human desire for relatability. It makes the creator feel more accessible, more real, even though the content is totally performative and staged for consumption. This mundane, sexy stuff capitalizes on that deep-seated human need for connection, even if the connection is manufactured, turning everyday tasks into this highly personal, highly profitable, and often voyeuristic spectacle.
So essentially, it's the ultimate life hack, isn't it? Take the most boring, unremarkable bits of your day and turn them into a serious income stream. Just add nudity and some smart framing. It's both undeniably clever in its simplicity and, honestly, a bit unsettling, especially when you think about the implications for how we see and consume authenticity online. Makes you wonder, is there any part of life left that can't be commodified, turned into content with the right filter, no clothes, and a good grasp of parasocial stuff? And this kind of leads us to what many people find one of the most, socially awkward tropes of all, the "my fans are my family" line. This is something you see again and again from creators on the platform. It's almost like required language for keeping subscribers loyal. You see thank you notes, holiday messages, celebrating milestones.
Exactly. It's often phrased just like that. I couldn't do this without you guys. You're not just my fans, you're my family. Or maybe we're a community, a family supporting each other. Now, looking at this through a wider lens, this language is deliberately trying to elevate a purely transactional commercial relationship, trying to make it seem deeply personal, emotionally supportive, even altruistic. It specifically leverages that powerful psychological pull of family bonds, but for commercial gain. It's a strategic move, right? Designed to build intense loyalty, deepen engagement, encourage more spending. But it always puts this huge emotional burden on the creators to keep up this illusion of unconditional closeness. The whole idea of family implies unconditional support, the safety net, right? An unbreakable bond. Using that kind of language in a context driven by explicit content and money creates this profound and often really problematic dissonance for everyone involved.
It really does paint some fascinating pictures in your head. Just imagine that Thanksgiving dinner with your OnlyFans family. Hey, Uncle Dave, could you pass the gravy? Oh, and also, could you unlock that premium video from Tuesday? My card got declined. Or maybe Cousin Jessica, looking great. Did you get that custom cookie recipe request done? Yeah, it just perfectly highlights the bizarre, often deeply dysfunctional and totally transactional nature of these supposed family relationships, where emotional language is used for very specific commercial goals.
And this brings up a really crucial point about the immense emotional labor creators are doing and the potentially unrealistic expectations they might accidentally encourage or even directly foster among their subscribers. It powerfully highlights those deeply blurred lines between genuine personal connection and calculated commercial exchange. That's like a defining feature of this whole digital space. When you actively tell your subscribers they're family, you're basically inviting a level of intimacy and expectation that can be incredibly hard and potentially dangerous to manage. It's this continuous performance that can, and often does, have very real, very complex emotional consequences for everyone, especially when those familial expectations inevitably crash against the stark transactional reality of the platform. Creators often talk about walking this tightrope, trying to build community while also protecting their boundaries from people who genuinely believe the performance is real. 2, the subscribers' demands. Unhinged creativity and unmet expectations.
Okay, right. So the creator side has its own peculiar dynamics of the subscriber side. Well, according to our sources, this is where reality just completely checks out. It enters truly uncharted territory. This is where we absolutely have to talk about the custom request. This is where the platform really goes into this realm of the bizarre, the incredibly specific, and often the deeply unsettling, all driven by individual, often super niche, desires.
Yeah, what struck me most here is how these custom requests become this unique and kind of peculiar form of patronage. Subscribers aren't just passively consuming stuff, they are, in a very real way, commissioning bespoke performance art. They're driving this highly specific, often incredibly bizarre little slice of the gig economy. It really makes you wonder, what kind of masterpieces are they actually commissioning? It's like the digital version of some eccentric art collector, but instead of a painting, they want a video of someone eating a sandwich. Just so. This specific kind of patronage vividly shows how incredibly niche desires can find an eager market, pushing the boundaries of what counts as content, or a service, or even maybe a form of artistic expression. It also speaks to this deep human need for control, for specificity, for having your unique fantasies validated and brought to life.
Well, let's dive into some of these bespoke masterpieces, because the stories are truly something else. One creator, our sources tell us, was asked to eat a very, very specific sandwich, topless, while audibly describing how huge it was and how she just couldn't possibly finish it. And the subscriber didn't just ask, he actually sent a detailed diagram of exactly how the sandwich needed to be built, a diagram for a sandwich. That's not just a request, that's like an architectural blueprint for a highly specific, almost ritualistic food performance piece. Shows an extraordinary level of control and detail from the patron, doesn't it?
It really makes you wonder, right? At what point does a specific fetish become performance art? Another creator talked about being asked to smash a vanilla cake with her butt while wearing a butt plug. Then she had to twerk over it and finally eat the leftover frosting off her own armpits. It's certainly efficient in its spectacle, I'll give them that. It manages to combine multiple highly specific demands into one single, cohesive, although highly unconventional performance. This example really shows the intricate and often elaborate scenarios subscribers dream up and are willing to pay for. Creates this strange interception of physical performance, very particular props, and oddly specific dietary or sensory requirements. It shows how far some people will go to curate their perfect personalized experience.
It gets even weirder though, believe it or not. One subscriber specifically wanted a creator to fart on his lips. Why? To make them go flap, flap, flap. The sheer dedication to achieving that particular and frankly bizarre sound effect is just, wow, something else entirely. It speaks to a level of fetishization that's hyper-focused on these tiny, often gross sensory details.
And then, yeah, we get into requests that undeniably cross into genuinely dangerous territory. One subscriber disturbingly wanted a creator to swallow a live goldfish. This just vividly highlights the concerning, often alarming lack of boundaries in some of these requests. It pushes creators into situations where the demand for extreme or unusual content could put them at significant risk. Physically, if they actually did it, and potentially legally, too, thinking about animal cruelty laws. This isn't just about weird fetishes anymore, it's about the potential for actual harm. It underscores the absolute need for creators to draw very clear, firm, ethical lines, even when faced with the potentially lucrative requests.
But I think in terms of sheer shock value and just disregard for, well, everything, nothing quite compares to the request for a creator to make a batch of brownies, but before baking them. to defecate in the
Yeah.
brownie mix.
And then mail them to him.
Yes, you heard that right. Defecate in the brownie mix. Mailed.
The wider implications of that specific request are just staggering. It raises a whole host of logistical, public health, and undeniable legal questions. We're talking about deliberately mailing biohazardous baked goods, potentially across state lines, maybe even internationally. Can you imagine the conversation at the post office? What's in the box, ma'am? Oh, it's just a baked good with a very personal touch. This is almost certainly a federal crime. It shows alarming, frankly dangerous detachment from reality and any concept of public safety. It goes way beyond unusual sexual preference into a zone of serious public health and legal violations. Unequivocally shows the absolute extreme end of subscriber demands and the ethical nightmares they create.
The requests really seem endless in their creativity and just strangeness. Our sources mention a guy who wanted a creator to pretend to step on snails, while specifically saying, "Bye-bye, Mr. Snail," in this exaggeratedly cheerful voice. The specific dialogue, the tone of voice, the imagined scene, it's all part of the package. Highlights a weird fascination with small creatures and a rather odd power dynamic.
This example and so many others really makes you ponder the sheer, unhinged creativity behind some of these requests. Another incredibly unsettling one involved a video of a creator swallowing marbles while pregnant, so the subscriber could supposedly hear them rattle when the baby kicked. It's truly horrific as a concept, yet you have to acknowledge the extreme, albeit totally perverse, originality, weaponizing pregnancy, using an unborn baby as an unwitting percussion instrument. It speaks to an almost unimaginable level of objectification and dehumanization, where even a developing life becomes a prop in a deeply disturbing fantasy, raises profound questions about the limits of human desire and the ethical boundaries creators are constantly pressured to navigate.
And then there's the guy who, apparently bored with just regular explicit photos, took matters into his own hands, started dressing his own anatomy up in elaborate costumes. Then he sent a creator pictures of his Phantom of the Cockra using an eggshell and a sock, apparently very ingeniously. And another masterpiece he called R2-Dick2, made from a blue and white sock while he made beeping noises. The sheer commitment to this particular bizarre bit is just astounding.
Yeah, the truly compelling thing there is the sheer ingenuity, isn't it? This guy clearly saw a problem boring photos and he solved it. With arts and crafts, it's that kind of unhinged yet undeniably imaginative creativity that really stands out. Demonstrates this remarkable commitment to a particular vision, however bizarre that vision might be. This person isn't just a passive consumer, they're an active, if totally unconventional, participant in the creative process. Pushing the boundaries of personal expression and entertainment in a way that's both absurd and strangely impressive shows how far some people will go to add a narrative and artistic flair to their fantasies.
Okay, so beyond these truly wild custom requests, you also get a whole group of subscribers who just try to get content for free. These various guilt trip tactics, saying things like, "I've never had to pay for sexting before, all the other girls do it for free, or maybe, "I'm a loyal fan, you should really hook me up." They approach it like they're haggling at a flea market, completely ignoring the labor, the time, the established business model.
Yeah, looking at that more broadly, the behavior is pretty much like walking into a restaurant, eating a full meal, and then telling the waiter, "You've never paid for food before, so you won't be starting now." It clearly highlights this pervasive sense of entitlement and a fundamental misunderstanding of the transaction that's common among some users. They just expect free emotional or sexual labor. Our sources suggest this bold strategy almost never works, by the way. It speaks to a wider societal issue, too, about devaluing certain kinds of labor, especially sex work or intimate content creation, where the immense effort, time, and emotional investment are often just dismissed or expected for free. It's a stark reminder that even in a digital marketplace, basic economic principles and respect for labor often struggle to gain traction. 3. The darker side of parasocial relationships and real-world overlaps.
Okay, so now our discussion takes a bit of a more serious turn. We're moving beyond just weird requests and people trying to get free stuff. The sources reveal this deeply concerning trend. Subscribers who get way too attached. They develop these intense parasocial relationships and genuinely start believing they're in a real romantic connection with the creator. They might see their monthly subscription fee not as, a commercial exchange, but like a down payment on a wedding, a sign of true love, a step towards a shared future.
What struck me most here is how quickly this overattachment can escalate, from perceived intimacy to actual real-world danger. There are numerous, frankly harrowing stories of stalkers, Individuals who go from online fixation to physical intrusion, showing up at creators' homes, their workplaces, even their kids' schools. This really spotlights the profound real-world dangers that happen when those carefully built lines between online personas and actual lived relationships get so severely blurred. For some subscribers, the carefully curated digital intimacy becomes completely indistinguishable from genuine personal connection. That leads to obsessive, intrusive, often terrifying behaviors that seriously threaten creators' safety and well-being. The imagined relationship tragically jumps off the screen, spills into physical space, with potentially devastating, life-altering consequences for the creator.
One particularly terrifying example mentioned in our sources describes a subscriber who got so deluded, he accused the creator of being an FBI spy, and then threatened to submit all the nudes he'd bought as evidence to the authorities. The sheer paranoia, the complete break from reality, it's startling, turning a simple commercial transaction into this national security conspiracy in his head. It's a stark example of how deep that psychological break can be.
Yeah, and when we connect that to the bigger picture, it just underscores how intensely these parasocial relationships, when they're not checked by reality, can lead to severe psychological detachment and profoundly dangerous behavior. It highlights the extreme vulnerability of creators in this space. This kind of delusion isn't just some quirky, isolated story. It reflects a serious breakdown in the subscriber's ability to tell fantasy from reality. And that puts creators in incredibly precarious, frightening, and often very isolating situations. It really exposes the darker, more disturbing side of intimate digital platforms, where the boundaries meant to protect people can be easily breached by those who lose touch with the transactional nature of it all, leading to outcomes that can be truly catastrophic for the person on the other side of that screen.
And it's not just the threat from strangers or, delusional subscribers. The sources point to an equally, if not maybe more, uncomfortable reality. People discovering old friends from high school, former coworkers, or even immediate family members subscribing to their explicit content. This is where the digital world just smashes head-on into your most intimate personal history, in the most profoundly awkward and often violating way possible. Our sources share this particularly memorable and frankly gut-wrenching example. One creator got an unsolicited text message from her uncle saying he stumbled across her videos and thought they were very nice. Stumbled across, like it was a lost umbrella at a family picnic, not content behind a paywall requiring an active subscription. The casualness of the language compared to the huge breach of privacy and social norms. It's truly staggering.
That specific incident is, as described in the sources, the ultimate cringe. There is quite literally no coming back from that. Can you imagine the unbearable tension, the unspoken knowledge at the next family Thanksgiving dinner after that text? This incident just powerfully highlights the immense personal costs of this kind of work and the complete, often irreversible dissolving of traditional social boundaries. It ruthlessly forces creators to grapple with this entirely new dimension of privacy, personal exposure, and social navigation, where their professional identity can suddenly and profoundly uncomfortably just invade their most intimate family relationships and personal life. The established social rules that normally govern our offline interactions just don't translate here, leading to profound, lasting, and often darkly humorous discomfort for everyone involved.
This just perfectly sums up the incredibly weird, often unsettling social space that OnlyFans and similar platforms inhabit. It's simultaneously a legitimate business, a form of entertainment, and this deeply personal, frequently bizarre, often emotionally charged interaction. Those traditional lines, public-private, professional-intimate, they're constantly being blurred and redrawn in ways that are profoundly uncomfortable and incredibly difficult to navigate, both for the creators and for everyone in their real-world lives. It's a constantly shifting landscape with no clear map, really. 5E, cultural shorthand, and broader perceptions. What's also fascinating to see is how quickly OnlyFans has become this pervasive cultural shorthand, and it's often weaponized as an insult. If someone is, conventionally attractive online, maybe an influencer, a gamer streaming, just posting selfies, the common, often dismissive troll comment is just to assume or accuse them of having an OnlyFans. It's almost like the new digital age version of that sexist, "go make me a sandwich" line. A quick, easy way to try and devalue someone's online presence, suggesting their worth is only in their perceived sexual market value.
Yeah, looking at that through a wider lens, it's undeniably a crude attempt to devalue someone, framing their attractiveness or any success they get from it as purely a commercial product, implying their worth or achievements are totally tied to their sexualized image and commodification. But what's genuinely fascinating here is the ironic twist this often takes. Frequently, the person being trolled, far from being shamed, might actually think, well, now that you mention it, I am considering it. You've accidentally just handed me a viable business plan. This dynamic brings up a crucial point about how society is still grappling with female autonomy and the monetization of sexuality online. It reflects this deep-seated societal discomfort with women actively controlling their own sexual labor and profiting from it, trying to re-stigmatize what many creators see as an act of empowerment and economic independence. The insult, paradoxically, often just highlights the platform's very real potential as a lucrative path to self-employment.
Our sources even give this alarming and deeply uncomfortable example of workplace misconduct. Directly linked to this cultural shorthand, a boss who relentlessly kept joking that his female employee must have an OnlyFans account. Then he went further, suggesting she should actively use her sexuality to get ahead at work. When she was, understandably offended and said something, he got angry, retaliated by calling her frigid. This goes way beyond just awkward office chat into incredibly inappropriate, hostile, and potentially illegal territory.
Yeah, that situation raises a question that's way beyond social awkwardness. This isn't just cringe, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. It's the absolute worst nightmare for any HR department. A textbook case of sexual harassment creating a hostile work environment. It starkly shows how the platform's notoriety and the stigma around it can aggressively seep into professional settings, enabling profoundly inappropriate and potentially illegal behavior. And this reflects a broader, systemic, societal issue with sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and the pervasive objectification of women in the workplace, where assumptions about a woman's sexuality are used to undermine her professional standing. The casual joke quickly escalates into discriminatory, retaliatory action, vividly showing how fast and destructively those assumptions can poison a professional setting and jeopardize someone's career.
This whole discussion really just highlights how this platform, which remember was originally meant for all sorts of creators, musicians, artists, chefs, fitness instructors, educators, and how it's been so completely and utterly dominated by adult content. That the name OnlyFans itself has become this loaded term, almost synonymous with explicit stuff, the original broader vision, almost entirely overshadowed by very specific, often explicit type of content.
It's a genuine shame, really. I mean, I, for one, would absolutely subscribe to a chef's OnlyFans. $5 a month to watch them slowly chop onions, maybe whisper a secret technique. That'd be fascinating. But when we connect this to the bigger picture, the platform has, for a huge chunk of the public, irrevocably changed the perception of even simple things, like a batch of brownies, that infamous brownie incident we talked about. It perfectly shows how a mundane, innocent item can get forever tainted, associated with the platform's more extreme and disturbing demands. This powerfully raises an important question about how quickly a platform's identity, its very essence, can be just consumed, redefined, and irrevocably changed by its most prominent and sensational content, completely regardless of its initial, maybe more wholesome intentions.
And I think that's the perfect, maybe slightly unsettling summary of this entire deep dive, isn't it? It's a world where everything is just slightly off kilter, the incentives are profoundly weird, and you can truly never look at a sandwich or a snail or, a baked good the same way again. It's a truly unique and often bewildering ecosystem. Outro. We've certainly taken a wild and hopefully insightful deep dive today, exploring that intense boss babe hustle culture, the deeply blurred and often problematic lines of parasocial families, and some truly unforgettable custom requests that surely skirted several international agreements on everything. It's been a fascinating journey into the wild west of digital intimacy and commerce, a space where human desires show up in often unpredictable ways.
What's truly fascinating here is that ultimately it is a beautiful, chaotic mess, isn't it? It's this potent mix of human desire, raw capitalism, and often profoundly questionable ideas, all blended together in this glorious, cringy, and undeniably compelling smoothie. It showcases the absolute extremes of human creativity and demand, from the totally mundane to the fantastically bizarre. Yet through it all, it still reflects these underlying fundamental aspects of connection, commerce, and identity in our modern world. It serves as a stark, if sometimes unsettling, mirror to our evolving desires and our collective willingness to transact for those desires, no matter how unusual they might be.
This experience really raises an important question for you, our listener, to think about. As digital platforms keep evolving at this incredible pace, constantly blurring the lines between personal, professional, and intimately transactional, what ethical considerations must be absolutely paramount for both creators and consumers alike? How do we as a society navigate a world where that fundamental human desire for connection meets the relentless pursuit of monetization so readily? And what does this whole phenomenon ultimately say about the rapidly evolving landscape of human interaction and our shared values in this digital age? It's definitely a lot to think about. On that thought-provoking note, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Join us next time when we'll tackle something incredibly wholesome, maybe a little less gastronomically adventurous. Perhaps the rich history of quilting.
Or naked quilting. It's content, after all.